I've been playing video games on PC since I was 6 years old. My first ever obsession was a humble DOS game by Origin Systems called Strike Commander. Flying an F-16 around with a joystick in 1996 in a 3D world gave a thrill like no other. Eventually I explored the sister series, Wing Commander, helicopter spin-offs, the Jane series, and developed a lifelong love affair with flight combat simulators. But one day, that rich high school bully who never heard the word no from his parents came along and snatched that Origin lunch money right out of my hand. That bully went by the name Electronic Arts. In fact, Electronic Arts had already acquired Origin by the time I was into the game. Fast forward 20 years and the same sense of deja vu is nauseating. Over the years, EA has bought out the creators of every major video game franchise I've ever loved. Almost a decade after Origin, they took over Westwood Studios, proceeding to drive the Command & Conquer franchise straight into the ground. Their next victim was Maxis and the SimCity series, into which I'd invested thousands of human hours. Today it's DICE, the creators of Battlefield 1942. Whilst they haven't shuttered DICE, not yet anyway, EA acquired them for about $20 million back in 2006, after already owning a controlling stake. Their latest project is Battlefield 5, the strategic World War II shooter that I once called the thinker's alternative to whatever this year's Call of Duty happens to be. Now before I go any further, I need to impress upon you just how much I loved Battlefield 1, the previous iteration in the Battlefield franchise, a World War I period shooter. I loved it so much that I piloted my way to the top of the charts in the bomber planes and even decided to start a YouTube channel. This YouTube channel, where I streamed my hilarious Battlefield interactions and uploaded features and reviews as the developers gradually expanded the game. I mean, it was no SimCity 4 in terms of hours spent, but the air, sea and ground combat sans modern day gimmicks made it one of my favourite games of all time. And it wasn't even DICE's best Battlefield to date. Battlefield 5 is certainly one of the most visually and sonically appealing shooters. The sound quality and fidelity, particularly in the skies, was the first standout element I really noticed. Whether it's surround sound headphones or on my 22-year-old Sony mini hi-fi system cranked up to 6. As a joystick and throttle player, I can't think of any flight or flight combat simulator that comes close to this level of immersion, and it's not even DICE's target market. You couple that with the phenomenal visual detail, haunting beauty of V1 rocket explosions that you feel push you back, the screen vibrations caused by approaching Tiger tanks as you hide in the rubble, the smoke trails left by rapid fire, popcorn flak cannons, and you have a video game that looks and feels more polished than anything that's come before it, but it's all a facade. You remember how sound quality was the first thing that struck me? The second thing was the in-game economy. This is worse than incomplete. It's clearly been completed in a way that was designed to take advantage of microtransactions, loot boxes, battle packs and the rest of these devious practices. Then had the purchase mechanisms stripped right out, but still thrown out the door by the publishers. Putting aside the fact that there's a bug, quote unquote, that stops you from earning credits once you reach a certain level, the earning rate for this in-game currency is so abysmal that you will not even be able to fully specialize your weapons and vehicles as you progress. You're going to have to make choices, let alone purchase these phenomenally expensive visual mods or skins. 12,600 credits for a outfit. Are you kidding me? It only cost me 900 credits to outfit my British Blenheim bomber with secondary payloads. We know from internal conversations that EA has long been looking to export its FIFA Ultimate Team money-spinning mechanics to its other games, specifically including Battlefront and Battlefield.
And the corrosive impact of the Ultimate Team product is easy to trace from its roots to the very heart of the Star Wars controversy we're now engulfed in. In February 2012, only a short time after the impact that FIFA Ultimate Team was having was being felt throughout EA, their label's president, Frank Gibbo, gave an interview where he said that EA were looking to export learnings from FIFA Ultimate Team to not only other sports games, but to their shooting and driving categories as well. That was 5 years ago. In March this year, the Chief Financial Officer of EA, Blake Jurgensen, gave an interview when discussing the recent announcement that Ultimate Team was an $800 million business for EA. And in that interview, he said this: "Like Battlefield or Battlefront, our Star Wars game, which are very similar in the depth of play, we can possibly add a similar mechanic to that." He's talking about FIFA Ultimate Team. "We spend a lot of time thinking about it, not for tomorrow, but over the next couple of years, you're going to see a lot more of that in our portfolio."
And given Battlefield 5 was in development right about the time the Star Wars Battlefront 2 controversy hit, it's no stretch of the imagination to see this system of random progression based on gambling being translated to Battlefield in the form of battle packs. But having removed the ability to make in-game purchases in the wake of the worldwide controversy Battlefront 2 spawned, thank Christ, all you're left with is the ability to generate a paltry few hundred credits for leveling up or completing one of a few weird mini quests, the bulk of which you'll need to spend bolstering your existing weapons, most of which aren't even in the game right now because they have to form part of a progressive release timeline designed to artificially boost player retention as the game ages. In addition to this, you'll need to level up every class, every individual weapon, and every single vehicle in order to be able to specialize them all. It's truly absurd how much time you'd have to spend playing the stuff you don't really want to play just to get access to 100% of the content this game offers. It also results in a perverse incentive of in-game advantages for the people who got access to the game early because they were willing to pre-order. I wouldn't call that pay to win, would you? The longer you've been playing, the more gear you'll have access to, the better equipped your tanks and planes will be, and the more you'll pawn the noobs. Not great for attracting those unfamiliar with shooters like these. I could go deep on the few pros and many cons of this Battlefield iteration, but in reality, I'd just be reviewing Battlefield 1 again. So much from the last game has returned in this game that I eventually stopped laughing and got angry, especially the weapons. The first time I went to exchange weapons as a German sniper, which I couldn't because I was locked to the short magazine Lee Enfield, as the Germans, the SMLE was the primary rifle in Battlefield 1, and so many of the others were featured as well. Now this could be because of DICE's liberal interpretation of time in the World War I shooter, with the BAR being one of the most prominent weapons in Battlefield 1. But it doesn't even feature in Battlefield 2. And with only British and German forces limiting the technology various other nations brought to the war, there's no M1 Garand. They managed to give a Tommy gun to the Brits, but launched their flagship World War II shooter without the most iconic firearm of the war. I don't even need to touch on the accusations of uneducation by company leaders, the rewriting of real historical missions to more plausible scenarios, the controversies around the roles of women in the war, and the release date, because honestly, there are enough terrible decisions to examine here over the game's development lifecycle to render those discussions redundant. I mean, I'll continue to play it almost exclusively as a pilot because releasing a new game every year or two, a la Call of Duty, effectively empties the server of the older titles, so I'm left with little choice. That's not to say I won't enjoy it. It does have some fun, if puzzling gameplay. And as I said, the Sky stuff is next level shit. But if there were still multiple Battlefield 1 servers to guarantee some full games on my favourite maps, I probably wouldn't bother. There's just nothing here. The woeful level of content barely qualifies Battlefield 5 as an expansion pack to Battlefield 1. And given the weapon choices on offer, that's being generous. EA bought out DICE in 2006 for a paltry $20 million. By 2020, they'll have laid to rest yet another of my all-time favourite video game franchises, citing the devastatingly poor sales and revenue generated by Battlefield 5, and the intellectual property that's been irreparably damaged by the shameless, predatory business practice, not of DICE, but of Electronic Arts. Make no mistake, this is how the end begins. It's happened to every video game franchise I've ever loved. And it always starts with poor sales, that can be traced back to marketing decisions by EA, not the developer. The pure garbage we've seen disguised as AAA titles over the last 12 months. Fallout 76, Destiny 2, Call of Duty World War II, where you open these card packs in the middle of a multiplayer lobby, Star Wars Battlefront 2, all the sports games, FIFA, Madden, NBA 19, and now even Red Dead Redemption Online. The future, my friends, is bleak.